The first thing Rall Ironthorne smelled was smoke, thick and bitter, rolling in on a wind that did not belong. Then she saw the glow, not sunrise, not lanterns, fire, licking up from her own barn like a hungry tongue. Horses screamed in the dark. Men laughed somewhere beyond the fence line, bold because they believed no one could stop them. Rall stood on the porch without a tremble in her hands. Her nightgown clung to her legs in the cold, but she did not step back. In her right hand was a knife with a bone handle, its edge so clean it caught the firelight like a thin strip of ice. Most widows would have cried out or begged. Rall only listened, counting footsteps the way other people counted prayers. A shadow moved near the corral. Another moved near the well. 3 more spread wide like coyotes circling a calf. Whoever they were, they had come with a plan. They wanted her scared first. They wanted her to run. That was how men like this always took land. Rall's eyes narrowed. She had seen predators up close, close enough to smell their breath. Men were easier. Men made noise. The night did not begin with fire, though. It began earlier that day, under a sun that pressed hard on the Arizona basin and turned every patch of ground to cracked leather. Dust spun in little columns across the flats, and the saguaros stood like tall guards that never blinked. Shadow Valley lay tucked between red cliffs, a stubborn strip of land that only the stubborn could love. Rall Ironthorne walked that land like it was part of her body. She was 47, strong in a quiet way, with black and silver hair braided down her back. Her eyes were the color of burned copper. People in town said her face looked carved by wind and grief, but her steps were steady, and her gaze missed nothing. That morning she was not thinking about bandits. She was thinking about a mountain lion. The big cat had been taking calves from ranches north of Vermilion County, leaving nothing but drag marks and blood-dark stones. Men had gone out with rifles and hounds and loud voices, but the lion had slipped through them like smoke. Rall did not bring a rifle. She brought a 12-inch blade at her hip and the old lessons a friend once taught her when she was younger and lonelier. Some folks called it crazy. Some called it pride. Rall called it respect. A lion did not fight fair. It fought to live. If you came at it with steel, you came as close to equal as a human could. She found the sign in a dry wash where the sand held prints like a memory. A heavy paw, a long stride. Fresh, she followed the trail up into broken rock, where shadows pooled under ledges and the air smelled like sun-warmed stone. The lion was there, crouched on a shelf of sandstone, blending so well into the cliff that it looked like the rock itself had grown teeth. Only its tail gave it away, twitching once, slow and angry. Rall climbed without sound. Her fingers found holds that would have looked like nothing to anyone else. She moved like someone who had learned to listen with her skin. When the lion's eyes snapped to her, gold and sharp, it did not hesitate. It launched. The world became fur and breath and violence. Rall did not panic. She pivoted, close enough to feel the lion's heat. Her blade flashed once, then again. Stones scraped under her boots. The lion's claws raked her shoulder, burning lines into her flesh, but she stayed on her feet. She drove the knife where it had to go, not with rage, but with clean purpose. Minutes later, the lion lay still. Rall knelt beside it, her shoulder bleeding down her arm, and placed a hand on its thick neck. Her breath came slow. Her eyes did not shine with victory. They shone with something older. "Go clean," she whispered, her voice low, like she was speaking to the land more than to the animal. She took what she needed and left the rest. Not for bragging, not for show, for balance. By late afternoon, she walked back toward Shadow Valley, the cliffs turning red in the sinking light. The ranch came into view, stone house, weathered barn, corrals, and the small garden she fought to keep alive in drought years. This place had been built with her husband, Kalen, a man who believed land was not something you owned with papers, but something you held with work. Kalen had been gone 3 years. Cancer took him slow, like a thief that refused to leave. People expected Rall to sell after the funeral, to fold her life up and move into town. Instead, she stayed. She drilled a deeper well. She cut waste. She worked until her hands split and healed and split again. Shadow Valley did not die. It learned to endure. That endurance drew attention. A young woman named Sarah Orick met her on the porch with a lantern, worry plain on her face. Sarah was 20, the ranch foreman's daughter, quick and smart, with steady hands that knew herbs better than most doctors in town. "You're hurt," Sarah said when she saw the blood. "It's nothing," Rall answered. "Just a reminder to stay sharp." Inside, Sarah cleaned the gashes and wrapped them tight. Rall did not complain. Pain was part of living here. What mattered was keeping moving. Afterward, Rall sat in her study, where maps and ledgers and old deeds lay in neat stacks. She opened the strongbox where Kalen kept every paper that proved Shadow Valley belonged to them. Paid in full, signed and sealed, safe. That was when she heard the sound that did not fit the evening. Hooves. Many of them. Too many for a neighbor. Too steady for lost riders. Rall stepped onto the porch again. The stars were out, but there was no moon. The road below the ridge held darkness like water in a deep well. Then lanterns appeared, bobbing closer, and the low shapes of men on horses came into view. 8 riders stopped in her yard like they owned it. One of them sat a little forward, dressed finer than the rest, his hat clean, his coat dark. Even from the porch, Rall could see the shape of his smile. "Mrs. Ironthorne," the man called, voice smooth as oiled leather. "Forgive the late visit. Business does not always wait for morning." 2 riders behind him lifted metal cans that sloshed when they moved. Rall's hand rested on the knife at her hip, and she watched them like a lion watches a pack of wolves, calm, still, and ready. "State your business," she said. The man raised a folder of papers and gave her that same thin smile again. "We're here," he said, "to collect what you owe." Quote, the man in the clean coat swung down from his saddle like he had all the time in the world. He walked a few steps closer, letting the others stay spread out, letting their numbers speak for him. The yard smelled of dust and horses and the sharp bite of smoke from far-off brush, but there was another smell too, sweet and oily, like fuel. "Name's Draven Cultra," he said, holding the folder up so she could see the thick stack of pages. "I represent a company that's taking an interest in this valley, and you, ma'am, are standing on land that now belongs to someone else." Rall did not move. Her face stayed calm, but her eyes hardened. "This land was paid in full," she said. "My husband and I bled for it. There's nothing to collect." Draven's smile did not reach his eyes. "Funny thing about paperwork," he said. "It can be lost. It can be found. It can say whatever the right man needs it to say." He tapped the folder. "This says you owe $457,000. Due at sunrise." One of the men behind him chuckled, like the number was a joke. Another lifted a fuel can and shook it once, slow, so the slosh could be heard. Rall's hand stayed near her knife, but she did not draw it. She knew what men like this wanted. They wanted a fast reaction. They wanted her to fire first so they could call her the criminal. "You're lying," she said, plain and steady. Draven's smile widened. "I'm offering you a way out. Sign over the property and walk away clean, or keep fighting, and the desert will do what the desert does. Fires happen. Wells go bad. Horses spook. Accidents stack up when a woman is alone." The word alone tried to cut her. It did not. Rall looked past him at the men holding fuel. Then she looked at the riders near the corral, the ones who had already placed themselves between her and her animals. She could feel the shape of their plan. They would scare her. They would burn a building. They would leave her with ash and fear. In the morning, they would show up with papers and a fake kind voice. Rall took a slow breath. "If you want to talk about paper," she said, "then you should come inside. I have the documents my husband kept. They will show you're wrong." Draven's eyes narrowed. He liked being in control, but he liked proof too, because proof made his lies look clean. He nodded once. "One of my men goes in with you," he said. A young man stepped forward, wide shoulders, quick eyes. He rested his hand near his gun like he was itching for a reason. "Name's Wade," he said, and he walked up the porch steps without asking permission. Rall led him into the house, not fast, not slow, like she was just a tired widow doing what she was told. Inside, the air smelled of leather, old wood, and dried herbs hanging by the window. The place was quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes careless men feel bold. Wade followed close. "You think you're smart," he said under his breath, "but you're just stubborn." Rall did not answer. She brought him to her study where the strongbox sat behind a framed photo of Kalen. Rall touched the frame once, gentle, like a goodbye she never finished, then turned away. "I'll open it," she said. "Stand back." Wade did not stand back. He leaned in, hungry to watch her fail. Rall placed her fingers on the lock and turned the dial slow, not because she feared the lock, but because she needed the time. She listened to the house like it was a living thing, a floorboard creak in the hall, the faint clink of a spur outside, the wind scraping against the window like a warning. The lock clicked open. Rall pulled the door wide. The box was empty. For one heartbeat, the room went colder. Not because of the night, but because Rall understood exactly what it meant. Someone had been inside her home before. Someone had taken the papers. Someone had made sure she would have nothing to hold up against that folder Draven carried. Wade grinned. "Looks like you're out of luck." Rall's eyes flicked to his gun hand. She did not rush. She did not plead. Her right hand moved like a snake, quick and quiet, and her knife slid free. Wade's grin died when he felt the cold edge press under his jaw. Rall's voice stayed low. "Don't breathe wrong," she said, "or you will bleed." Wade froze. His eyes darted toward the door like he wanted to run. He could not. Rall stood close, her arm steady, her blade placed where it mattered. "How?" he whispered. Rall leaned in. "I've stood over mountain lions with this knife," she said. "Men do not scare me." She guided him out of the study, her steps quiet, his steps stiff. They moved through the hallway and onto the porch, where the night opened up wide and harsh. Draven looked up, annoyed, then saw Wade's face and the blade at his throat. The annoyance slid into something sharper. "Now this," Draven said, "is a mistake." Rall kept Wade between herself and the yard. "Call your men back," she said. "No one pours fuel. No one lights a match." Draven lifted his hands like he was calm. "You're doing this in front of witnesses," he said. "You hurt him, and you're finished." Rall's eyes stayed on his. "You came to burn my home," she said. "Don't pretend you care about law." One of Draven's men took a step forward. Another shifted near the barn. The fuel cans were still in their hands. Rall could see the hunger on their faces, the urge to show power. Draven spoke again, quieter now. "You're outnumbered." Rall's mouth did not smile, but something in her face changed, like the night itself had settled into her bones. "I don't need numbers," she said. "I need you to make one wrong move." She reached her left hand behind her and pressed a small switch near the porch post. The ranch lights died at once. The yard dropped into deep black. Only Draven's lanterns and the faint starlight remained, and in that darkness his men were suddenly the ones on display. Their lantern glow lit their own faces, their own hands, their own fear. A man cursed. Another lifted his gun and pointed it into nothing. Then a sharp sound cracked the night. Not a gunshot, but glass breaking. One lantern went out. Another dropped and rolled, flames licking the dirt before dying. Draven turned in a tight circle. "Hold steady," he barked. "Stay where you are." But men do not hold steady when they cannot see. A horse screamed near the corral. Something slammed against the fence, hard enough to shake it. One of the fuel men stumbled, and the can slipped, spilling its stink across the ground. Rall moved Wade back a step, using him like a shield, and in the same motion she cut a rope hanging on the porch rail. A weight dropped in the darkness with a dull thud. A trap, simple and old, meant for coyotes. A man yelped as it snapped around his ankle. Panic spread fast. Draven's men started firing into the dark, wild and blind. Their gun flashes lit the yard in quick bursts, showing faces twisted with fear and confusion. Rall's voice cut through it, clear and hard. "Leave," she said. "Take your boy and go." Draven's lantern light caught the thin scar line across his cheek from some older fight, and for the first time Rall saw something real in him, not charm, not smooth talk, but hate. "You think this ends tonight," he said. "It doesn't." He took one slow step back, then another, signaling his men without words. Two of them grabbed the spilled fuel can, and one struck a match. Rall's heart tightened. Not for the house, not for the barn. For the life inside it all, the animals, the hands that worked, the memories of Kalen built into every beam. The match hit the fuel-soaked dirt, and fire jumped like it had been waiting. The flames ran toward the barn. Rall pushed Wade forward, shoving him down the porch steps hard enough to make him stumble. "Go," she hissed. Draven caught Wade by the collar and pulled him back, never taking his eyes off Rall. The barn caught fast. Dry wood and old hay turned into a roaring mouth of fire. Rall stood in the dark with her knife in hand, watching her life burn, and her face did not break. But her eyes promised something the night itself seemed to understand. Draven's men mounted up in the confusion, backing away from the heat and the smoke. Draven stayed just long enough to make sure she saw him. "You'll sign those papers," he said. "One way or another." Then he turned and rode into the black, leaving Rall alone with flames, ash, and a new kind of grief that did not cry. It sharpened, and as the barn roof started to collapse, Rall Ironthorne stepped off the porch and walked straight toward the fire, not to save the wood, but to save what still had a heartbeat. The barn roof groaned like an animal in pain, then caved in with a shower of sparks. Heat rolled across the yard in waves, and smoke clawed at Rall's throat. She did not hesitate. She ran straight into the fire's edge, where most people would have frozen, her boots pounding the dirt, her knife still in her hand like it was part of her. Inside the pen, a mare kicked the gate hard enough to rattle the hinges. The horses were trapped between flame and fence, eyes white with terror. Rall grabbed the latch with her left hand and yanked. It held. She planted her feet, put her shoulder into it, and pulled again. The wood was swelling from heat. The metal was warping. Rall felt the sting in her wounded shoulder, but she ignored it the same way she ignored hunger and thirst on long hunts. A burning beam dropped behind her, throwing sparks across her back. She drew her knife and struck the gate's rope tie in one clean motion. The rope snapped. The gate swung wide. "Go!" she shouted. The first horse bolted out. Then another. Then the rest, hooves pounding past her into the open field. Rall turned to the small stall where the youngest colt was pinned, too scared to move. The flames were closing in. She stepped in, wrapped her arms around its neck, and leaned her forehead against its face for one steady breath. Then she slapped its rump and shoved. The colt ran. Rall stumbled back into the yard as the fire roared higher. Her hair smelled like smoke, her lungs burned. She looked at the barn that she and Kalen had built, plank by plank. It was turning into nothing. Sarah burst out of the house, a blanket over her shoulders and a bucket in her hands that looked small and useless against the blaze. Her face was streaked with tears and soot. "They're gone," Sarah cried. "They burned it. Why would they do this?" Quote. Rall's voice was calm, but it was not soft. "Because they think fire makes people fold," she said. Oric came running from the bunkhouse with two ranch hands behind him, Zach and Taven Rusk, hauling water barrels and coughing in the smoke. Ora was 62, built like an old oak, and he had lived long enough to know what kind of men rode in the dark. He stared at the burning barn, then at Rall. "Cultra," he said, like he was naming a disease. Rall nodded once. "He brought papers, said we owe money that was already paid. He came to scare us into signing." Ora's jaw tightened. "Sheriff won't touch him." "No," Rall said. "He already proved that." For a moment, the only sound was fire and the frantic snorts of horses in the pasture. Then Rall's eyes lifted to the ridgeline beyond the house. In the black distance, she saw 3 faint points of light moving away. Riders leaving. Confident. They thought the story ended with ashes. Rall walked into the smoke, not toward the flames now, but toward the ground near the porch where fuel had spilled. She knelt and touched the dirt. Sticky. Fresh. She raised her fingers to her nose, smelling the sharp gasoline bite. "They'll be back," she said. Sarah's voice shook. "How can you be sure?" Quote. Rall stood, wiping her hand on her pants. "Predators always come back when they think they've wounded you," she said. "They come back to finish the job." Ora looked at her knife. "You still got that edge," he said. Rall's eyes stayed on the burning barn. That edge is the only reason they walked away breathing. The fire finally started to lose its hunger as the last of the hay collapsed into charred piles. The roof was gone. The walls were half-standing, black skeletons under the stars. When the worst of it settled, the ranch felt too quiet, like the land itself was holding its breath. Rall walked to the small tool shed behind the house and opened it with a key she kept hidden under a flat stone. Inside was not just tools. Inside was what she never spoke about in town. A short Winchester sat on the wall, old but clean. A bow hung beside it, shaped smooth and strong. Beneath them, wrapped in oilcloth, were 3 throwing knives she had forged herself during the hardest months after Kaelin died, when grief turned into something she had to shape or it would ruin her. Sarah stepped closer, eyes wide. "Mrs. Ironthorne," she whispered, "what is all that?" Rall looked at her, and for the first time that night her face softened. Not into fear, into truth. "Kaelin wanted this ranch to be safe," she said, "but safe is not the same as helpless." Ora came to stand in the doorway. "We're outnumbered," he said. "Cultra's got riders, money, men who don't mind blood." Rall's voice stayed steady. "Then we stop fighting like a ranch," she said. "We fight like the land." She spread a map on the kitchen table, the old kind with hand-drawn marks and notes in Kaelin's writing, the single-access road, the choke point where the canyon narrowed, the wash that cut behind the ridge, the spring line that could be hidden, the places where the cliffs formed natural blind spots. "These canyons are a trap," Rall said, "if you know them." Quote. Ora leaned over, following her finger. "Cultra don't know them." Rall's eyes lifted. "But he will learn fast if we let him walk in," she said. Taven Rusk shifted, nervous. "He'll bring more men next time." Rall nodded. "Yes, and he'll bring fuel again, maybe bullets too." Sarah swallowed hard. "And the sheriff?" Rall's expression went flat. "The sheriff is bought," she said. "So we do not call him." Ora's gaze held hers for a long moment, then he nodded once, slow. "What do you need from us?" Rall looked at each of them one by one, and in her eyes there was no panic, only purpose. "Tonight," she said, "we track them." Zack blinked. "Right now?" Rall grabbed a lantern and a coil of rope. "They spilled fuel. They left prints. They left fear behind," she said. "Fear makes men sloppy." She stepped outside into the cooling night. Smoke still drifted from the barn ruins, but the stars above were bright and cold, and the desert was wide enough to hide whole lives. Rall moved to the yard where the riders had stood. In the soft dirt near the gate, hoof prints pressed deep. One horse had a chipped shoe, another dragged slightly, leaving a thin line. Rall crouched low, touching the mark with 2 fingers, reading it like a page. 8 riders, she said. 1 limping horse. They went west toward Serpentback Ridge. Ora's eyes narrowed. "That's Cultra land." Rall stood. "Then we walk into his world," she said. Sarah's voice trembled. "You can't. They'll kill you." Rall turned, and the firelight from the barn's dying embers painted her face in red and shadow. "They tried to kill my home tonight," she said. "They just don't know what they woke up." They followed her into the dark, 3 figures moving across the open basin where the wind erased sound. Rall led without lantern for most of the way, using starlight and memory, stepping around loose rock, sliding through brush without a rustle. She moved like she belonged to the night. After an hour, they reached a shallow rise overlooking a camp tucked between boulders. 8 horses tied. 2 wagons. A small fire burning low. Men sitting close, laughing and drinking as if they had done something brave. Rall watched them from the ridge, eyes cold and clear. Draven Cultra sat apart, cleaning his pistol with slow care. The folder of papers lay on a crate beside him. His face was calm, but his jaw was tight, like he was still angry that a widow had made him hesitate. Aura whispered, "What now?" Rall's eyes stayed on Draven. "Now," she said, "we take the truth." She slid down the ridge like a shadow, rope in her hands, knife at her hip. Aura and Zack stayed back where she signaled, holding their breath. Sarah remained behind them, shaking but refusing to run. Rall moved around the edge of the camp, stepping where the ground was hard so she would not leave sound. She reached the horses first. One lifted its head, snorting once. Rall touched its muzzle gently, calming it with the quiet confidence of someone who had handled wild things. Then she tied a rope low across the path leading away from camp, hidden in the dark, a simple snare that would trip a running man. She circled to the wagon where the papers sat. A man stood near it, half asleep, leaning on a rifle. Rall waited until he shifted his weight, until his eyes drooped. Then she moved, her hand clamped over his mouth, her knife pressed under his ribs, not stabbing, just promising. He froze like a rabbit. Rall whispered in his ear, voice colder than the desert night, "Don't fight. I'm not here to kill you." His breath shook against her palm. She guided him behind the wagon and bound his wrists with a strip of cloth before he could think. She left him alive, wide-eyed and helpless in silence. Then she lifted the folder. The pages inside were thick, stamped, signed, and forged. Rall's chest tightened, not with fear now, but with a different kind of pain. Kaelin's name was there, written in ink that tried to mimic his hand. The amount owed, the threat of seizure, the fake bank seal. They had dragged her husband's name through mud just to steal what he built. Rall's fingers gripped the folder so hard the edges bent. Behind her, a voice cut low. "I wondered if you'd come." Rall did not spin fast. She turned slow, controlled, because sudden movement was what frightened prey. Draven Cultra stood a few steps away, pistol raised, eyes bright with satisfaction. He had been waiting. "You think you're a ghost," he said, "but you're flesh, and flesh bleeds." Rall held the folder in one hand and kept the other near her knife. "You stole from a dead man," she said. Draven's smile was thin. "Dead men don't own land," he said. "Living men do, and I'm living." He took a step closer. "Drop the folder," he said. "Then I'll let your people walk away." Rall's mind worked fast, clean, the way it did in a hunt. She could see the camp behind him, 6 men, still near the fire. 1 missing guard, tied behind the wagon, horses shifting in the dark. A rope snare stretched low across the escape path. Rall looked at Draven's pistol. She looked at his stance. She looked at the way his eyes kept flicking to her knife hand. He feared that blade more than any gun. Rall lifted the folder, not dropping it, but raising it like a flag. "This is what you really are," she said. "Paper and lies." Quote. Draven's face tightened. Last warning. Rall took a slow breath and made her choice. She flung the folder into the fire. The pages caught fast, flames eating ink, seals, and forged signatures in seconds. The men near the fire jumped up, shouting. Draven lunged forward with a sound that was almost a scream. Rall moved at the same time. Her knife flashed once, cutting his gun hand across the knuckles. Not enough to take it off, enough to make the pistol fall. Draven roared, clutching his bleeding hand. Men rushed toward them, boots pounding, guns lifting. In the chaos, Rall grabbed Draven by his coat and shoved him toward the rope snare line. He stumbled, trying to regain balance, and his boot caught the rope. Draven crashed hard onto his back, air blasting out of him. Before he could rise, Rall placed her boot on his chest and pressed her knife to his throat. The camp froze. 6 men stood with guns half raised, caught between rage and fear. They had seen a widow walk into their camp, disarm their boss, and put him on the ground like he was nothing. Rall's voice carried, clear and steady. "You burned my barn," she said. "You threatened my home. You forged my husband's name." She leaned closer, eyes locked on Draven's. "Now listen," she said. "You leave Shadow Valley tonight. You never come back." Draven spat blood and smoke. "You think this ends it?" Quote. Rall's eyes did not blink. "It ends your belief that I'm easy," she said. "That's enough." She lifted the knife just slightly, letting the cold edge kiss his skin. Draven went still, because he felt the truth in her hands. She was not bluffing. Not with steel. Not after what she had survived in her life. Rall looked up at the men. "Take him," she said, "and ride." One of them swallowed hard. "You'll let us go?" Quote. Rall's voice stayed flat. "If you leave now," she said, "and if you never return." They hesitated, then stepped forward, lifting Draven by his arms. He staggered, shaking with fury and pain. His eyes never left Rall. "This isn't over," he whispered. Rall watched him, calm as stone. "For you," she said, "it already is." Quote. The riders mounted in a rush, dragging their pride behind them. As they fled into the dark, one man tried to look back, and Rall saw the fear on his face, the same fear a mountain lion shows when it realizes it has entered a trap. When the hoofbeats faded, Aura and Zack came down from the ridge, breathing hard, eyes wide. Sarah followed, trembling but still standing. Aura looked at the dying fire, the ashes of the forged papers, and then at Rall. "You didn't kill him," he said. Rall wiped her knife clean on her sleeve. "I didn't need to," she said. "I wanted him to live with the memory." She turned her face toward the horizon where the riders disappeared. The desert wind moved across the rocks, carrying smoke away. The stars stayed cold and bright. Rall Ironthorne walked back toward Shadow Valley with her people behind her, her barn burned, her heart heavy, and her spirit sharpened into something dangerous, because she knew the real truth. Men like Draven Cultra did not forgive humiliation. He would come back with more men, more fire, and this time he would come to kill. And when he did, Shadow Valley would not be a ranch